Hi cuties! This video is pretty late, but it's that time again. Time to talk about all the books that I read in June. I read 13 books. I was gonna try to do fingers, then I realized I don't have enough fingers. But I read 13 books. Audiobooks have certainly been helping me. I read 6 physical books and 7 audiobooks. But I'm gonna tell you about each one in the order that I read them. The first one being Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. This was actually a reread for me. I read this many moons ago, back in high school, but because of the new Amazon series, I wanted to reread it. And yes, I loved the Amazon series of it. David Tennant is a perfect Crowley. Michael Sheen is a perfect Aziraphale. I have other critiques of it, but for the most part, I loved it. And I loved this book. I give this book 4 out of 5 stars. Love it. I love the humor in it, but the one thing that I really didn't get in both here and the series was Anathema and Newt. I did not get the purpose of their developed relationship, and I really didn't get why they had to have sex in the middle of the apocalypse. Like, why? I don't get it. Ugh. So Anathema and Newt's whole storyline I just don't care about, and it made no sense to me. The rest of it I love, and this is still one of my top Neil Gaiman books, but it's also Terry Pratchett, so it's my top one of the 2 of them. Next, I listened to The Inexplicable Logic of My Life by Benjamin Elier-Sains. This was good. It's a contemporary book about a boy who's going through his life. He was adopted, his dad is gay, and he's starting to realize he's a little bit more violent and he doesn't know why. So he's trying to understand who he is because he doesn't know who his dad is and doesn't really remember too much of his mom. His adopted dad gives him a letter that his mom wrote to him, and he puts off reading it because he's just got a lot of thoughts going on in his brain. It's a whole coming of age discovery of self, basically. It was very beautiful, and I teared up a bit at some points. And I hadn't read Aristotle and Dante before this. This was my first Benjamin Elier-Sains book. 4 out of 5 stars. It was good. It's not exactly the type of story that I normally would seek out and read. That's the whole thing with my audiobooks. I tend to grab ones that I don't already have on my shelves and went, why not? I hear a lot about Aristotle and Dante. Let's start with this one. The next audiobook I read was The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Ahdieh. And as you can see, I bought the physical copy. This is a retelling of 1001 Arabian Nights, and I super duper liked it. I think this is highly underrated. Again, I believe I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked how it was interpreted and how the curse was played out and the reasonings behind the king killing all these girls. I really liked the backstory of Scheherazade and the king and her friend Tariq. So normally I'm not one for love triangles, but this wasn't really a love triangle because it wasn't like the girl trying to decide who she loves more. It was kind of growing from an old relationship into a new one, but the other guy not really getting that she's over him. And I thought it was well played. I thought the characters were believable, especially Scheherazade and her sense of self was really strong. It was a very good retelling of the story that a lot of other retellings brush off the fact that the king has been killing all his wives. This one doesn't. So it really touches on what is going on, why this is happening, how it's unforgivable, and all this other crazy stuff. Next is another book that I really want to buy because it is a beautiful cover, but I listened to it on audiobook first, was The Light Between Worlds. A lot of people are saying, oh, it's just Narnia, people are copying Narnia. It's not stealing the story of Narnia. It's an exploration in what would happen to kids who had gone to Narnia and had to come back and just live here. It's not Narnia, it's not the Pevensies, but there are parallels between that. But it was 3 siblings that went to this other world. Now they're back in the normal world. They've been living in the normal world, and the youngest sibling still not over it, and she's suffering a lot of mental health issues. And so the first half of the book is told from her point of view, and then there's the big plot thing that happens in the middle, and we switch to her older sister's point of view. I liked reading the second half of the book more, I think. I don't even know why. I liked both because both perspectives are so unique. I kind of wish it was a little longer. It still kind of leaves you with a bit unknown gray area, and I kind of wish it was a little bit more wrapped up in the end. It still has a really good ending. It is a very emotional story. There are some triggering topics like suicide. So bear that in mind when you read it. Otherwise, I think it is a gorgeous book. Beautiful storytelling, beautiful aesthetic, gorgeous cover. I can't wait to actually have it in my hands and put it on my shelf. And I read another audiobook, which is Royals, also known as Prince Charming. There was a reprint of it and they changed the title, but the audiobook still said Royals. This was so freaking cute. It is about a girl named Daisy whose sister is engaged to the Crown Prince of Scotland. And it's hilarious because Daisy wants nothing to do with this. It's so stupid. And of course she ends up finding love there. It's a contemporary romance story. It's so cute. It's such a quick read, especially after listening to Light Between Worlds, which is very depressing. You need a little happy little rom-com to bring your mood back up, and that's what this did for me. Silly, goofy, overly dramatic at sometimes, little story that I love. And I really hope they make this a movie, because yes, please. Side note, I'm currently listening to the sequel, Her Royal Highness, and I only have an hour left of it, but I had to stop listening to it so I can make this video. And after Royals, I got to the sequel to The Wrath and the Dawn, The Rose and the Dagger by Renee Ahdieh. I didn't like this one as much as Wrath and the Dawn. I still thought it was good. It had a lot more of Tarek. I'm not a fan of Tarek very much. There was a lot more going on in the story. It was kind of hard to keep track of, but it was a good conclusion to the duology. It explored a lot more magical, fantastical themes, but I was really upset at one of the deaths that happens because why? Rude, and I'm offended. I gave it 3.5. Then I finally got to a book that was on my top 10 to read for this year, and I was very excited about it, and for good reason, because I loved it, and that was The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Such a good book. I loved it. Some people are saying it's too Tim Burton-y. I disagree. I think it has its own unique, you know, aesthetic to it, being the whites and the black and the red, which is a color scheme that I love, going all the way back to my Prince of Tennis years and Team for Dominé. But the world building of this was so interesting. I adored the characters. It was such a plot twist of an ending. It just keeps you on this massive ride, and you're kind of confused a lot of it because there's so much going on behind the scenes. And the magic in it is so intricate, but it's so different for both of the main characters. And I love this book. And Erin Morgenstern is coming out with a new book, and I'm very excited about it. If it's anywhere near as good as Night Circus, I'm going to be dying. If you guys haven't read The Night Circus yet, read it, because it is just so beautiful, and I want to read it over and over and over again. Next book I got was a pre-order that arrived, and it's just released, and you've probably heard people talking about it and reviewing it, but I felt really cool because I was one of the first people to review it. The Hidden Power of Effing Up by the Try Guys. I've been a fan of the Try Guys for a very long time, and I love them so much. If I had to take a quiz as to which Try Guy am I would probably end up being Keith. I really, really relate to Keith, I think. Which is, we all want to be Eugene. I'm Keith. And that's a good thing. Keith, if you're watching this, I love you. I'm a band nerd as well. This is such a fun book. I don't really read self-help books because a lot of the time they seem either condescending or blatantly lying or just too touchy-feely that it seems fake. But reading other stories and their triumphs and failures, and mostly their failures because that's what the book is about, was really inspiring and really freaking funny. Thoroughly enjoyed this, and I know they're releasing videos about all the big segments. They've already done Ned's fashion fears in this, Keith's weight loss journey and stuff. I'm very excited to see the rest come out of their channel. I was super sad that I didn't get to go see them live for their concert, or I guess their live show. One day I will get to see them live. But if you're like me and you don't really read self-help, this is one book that I highly recommend to try out reading. Back in the realm of cute rom-com-y audiobooks, I read Love a la Mode. And this is another contemporary romance that will make you very hungry when you read it, because it's about two teenagers who are sent to France to study at this kind of cooking academy run by a very famous chef. It's another super duper adorable one. One of them is super good at cooking. The other girl wants to be a pastry chef, so she's kind of out of her element in like meat cuts and stuff like that. They band together and they're super cute and they have all these fun friends from around the world. But there's one thing that I was really annoyed about. So the boy Henry is Asian. He's Korean. And the girl is white. Cool, fine. The entire time Henry is at the academy, he's making everything perfectly, and the bitchy chef is telling him she doesn't see who he is in it. Girl Rosie is just a disaster and can't do anything except pastries. But they get to the final big exam, basically, where they have to make a 3-course meal. Henry finally makes something Asian, and the woman's like, finally, we see who you are. And but his dessert was for his sister, and it was a very plain dessert, but it meant something to him. And she's like, well, besides the dessert, now I see who you are. And I'm like, you're not seeing who he is. You're just seeing his ethnicity. That's all you're seeing. You're not paying attention. Because then the girl makes hamburgers because of her dead father. And they're like, amazing, we love it. And it's like, wait a second. It's okay for her to make food because it means something from her family, but not okay for the Asian kid. The Asian kid has to make something that's Asian. And it was the same for the other characters of other ethnicities. I can't say English. Like the Indian girl had to make something Indian, and the Spanish guy made something Spanish. And I'm like, wait, that's not who they are. That's just their ethnicity. My God, ethnicity does not equal personality. Wow, it sounds like I really hated this book, but I didn't. It was just that ending scene that I was like, really? Otherwise, it's super cute. Next up, we have a trilogy, but I'm going to tell you each book because they're all very different books. So, the first book is Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. I actually like the movie more. This is supposed to be satire, but I didn't really feel the satire. There's a lot of shopping, there's a lot of brand name dropping, but that didn't feel very satirical to me. Just was kind of a book. It's supposed to be Nick and Rachel. There are so many other perspectives that do nothing for the story that I'm just kind of confused as to why it was in the book. It just made the book super long. So it was actually really hard to get through this one. Overall, I did still enjoy it. I think I gave it 3 out of 5, but because I loved the movie so much, it was kind of a disappointment. And then the last audiobook that I read for the month was Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Alir Sains. So I got to read the other book that everyone goes crazy over, but I discovered something about Benjamin Alir Sains' writing. So this book is about Ari and Dante, and Ari doesn't really have friends. Neither does Dante, really, because he's weird. It's another coming-of-age story, very similar to Inexplicable Logic of My Life, and there are a lot, actually, there's a lot of similarities, because Ari has a brother who's in prison that his family refused to talk about. But lo and behold, there's an envelope he refuses to open. Sound familiar? So both of our protagonists in both stories have a missing family member. They're both dealing with violence issues. They're both having this coming of age story. They both have a gay friend. Both have an annoying girl. And it might have just been the audiobook, but I didn't like how the girl was portrayed. She might have been a better character if I had read it myself, but I didn't like how that was going on. And they both get sick. There was so much of the same that happened in both books that I was like, what? Because the only difference was the sexuality of the main character, really. But otherwise, the protagonists of both stories are extremely similar. So it was weird. I still enjoyed both books. I kind of wished Ari and Dante was a little longer to get to our big self-realization moment, and then that's it. There's nothing else. And I felt kind of cheated that we were building up to this big thing and then, okay, we're done. So, kind of ended the month on a big meh. Because the next 2 books that I read were China Rich Girlfriend and Rich People Problems by Kevin Kwan. Second and third of Crazy Rich Asians. These are such different books, especially from the first one. There's so little of Nick and Rachel in this. There was a lot of Kitty, which I did not realize Kitty was going to be such a huge character. But I guess it had more to deal with Rachel's real family, because if you've seen the movie or read these books, then you know that her dad's alive. And by the title, you can kind of guess that, oh, he's super rich too, because it plays on a lot of tropes, which is where the satire kind of comes in. But this was just so weird. There were, again, a lot more perspectives that I didn't understand. The beginning of the book involves the death of a girl by accident from a car wreck. And it's not really touched on. It's touched on a little bit. I guess that comes in a bit more in the second book, or the third book. Yeah, I felt like this was more of a sequel to this than being a sequel to Crazy Rich Asians. Again, 3 out of 5. And we get Nick and Rachel. They kind of get their ending here. So I didn't understand why there was a third book. Because Rich People Problems barely has Nick and Rachel in it. It's very much more Astrid's story and Kitty's story. Nick is kind of in this because Grandma's dying in this one. But again, he's also not. And there was so much perspective from Eddie. And I hate Eddie. I hate him so much. I didn't understand why we had to have his perspective. There were just too many perspectives. It probably would have been better if this was a soap opera. It might make more sense on screen, but on the paper, I didn't really care for it very much. It was a 3-star. Now that I'm mulling it over, I'd probably go down to 2.5. So I ended the month on kind of a blech mode. The middle of the month, I had my high. But just the end of June kind of fell flat. Those are the books that I read in June 2019. What books did you read in June? Put them down in the comments below. And of course, you guys can reach me on Facebook, Tumblr, and Twitter. Links in the description. I will see you next time, cuties. Bye!